guys, I'm Elegant and welcome to another weekly Pokevlog. So I'm sorry if the lighting's very dull today, it's throwing it down outside and there isn't much natural light inside my room, but I tried to sort of mess with the camera settings as much as I could. But this week's Pokevlog is on the Johto region. It's the spotlight on the Johto region because a while ago I did start doing the spotlights in each region. I only got through Kanto though because I got distracted by other things in other weeks. But yeah, I'm going to carry on doing these straight through right till Unova. And so the Johto region was the second generation. It was introduced in the second generation. There was some remakes in the fourth generation, but I'm mainly going to concentrate through the generations and do the individual generations. And also somewhat concentrate on the regions, and if there is some sort of discrepancy between the remakes and the actual game, I will mention it. But anyway, as I said in my Kanto Spotlight, Johto was actually originally meant to be in the Red, Blue and Green games. All the Johto Pokemon, the whole Johto region, was meant to be mixed with Kanto, but unfortunately there wasn't enough space. But actually it was rather fortunate for us because that did mean we got a separate game, which was Pokemon Gold, Silver and Crystal, which was quite the smallest, which is the smallest generation yet, because the generation was actually meant to be in addition to the sort of the first generation, rather than a generation of its own, and that's why I think it's a bit of a smaller generation. But what it did bring with the game, it brought a lot of new features into the game, which a lot of people did like. So it brought things in like shiny Pokemon, Pokerus. It brought in day and night time, which is a huge sort of implementation in the game, and it also brought in, like, it fixed some types. So Psychic was overpowered in the third generation, and Psychic moves were actually super effective against Ghost types, or at least they were neutral effective, and Ghost types couldn't affect Psychic types, when it should have been the other way around. And also there weren't any Steel or Dark types in the first generation, so generally Psychic was overpowered in the first generation. So in the second generation they fixed that, they added the Steel type and the Dark type. So it balances out the game, and they did all the bug fixes and things, so it was a very good cleanup for the second generation. But the second generation did, in Johto, it did implement quite a different style to the first generation, because Johto was more of a traditional kind of based kind of region as such, whereas Kanto is very much genetics based and modern and sciencey based, with the sort of evolutions having different evolutions and Mewtwo being cloned and all that sort of thing. So the Johto region was much more based on tradition and classics, with the Lugia and Ho-Oh and the Burnt Tower and all that sorts of thing, history. Which I think was the original contrast that they decided to put in. They were kind of opposite when they were next to each other. And Johto also had a few new implementations of Pokemon, but actually the smallest amount of Pokemon, so I kind of got lost on my note sheet there. But Johto, the introduction of Pokemon in Johto was actually the smallest introduction yet of Pokemon, which I think is also caused by all the Johto Pokemon being pre-planned for the Kanto region, but not being able to put them on the Kanto game and carrying them over into the next game. I think that was the reason why. But obviously I do love the Johto Pokemon because of Espeon. Espeon was introduced in Johto, plus quite a few other cool Pokemon, and I'm going to talk about a couple of the things, strange things about the Pokemon in just a minute. But yeah, your rival is actually the son of Giovanni in that game as well, and the game seems to be a little bit harsher than any of the other games. I mean, I know in the first original game they did have the Lavender Town and the possibility of Gary's Raticate dying, but the sort of, I think he's called Silver, your rival in Silver, Gold and Crystal. He actually is the son of Giovanni, like I said, and he's sort of the more... he's darker than Giovanni, and he even steals his Pokemon. It's the only game where the rival actually steals the Pokemon to get his first Pokemon. So therefore it has a little bit of a darker side to that game, which I think is rather cool, and I think is why a lot of people like it. But Marill was actually introduced in the second generation, and an interesting thing about Marill is that it's pre-evolution Azurill, which was introduced in the later generation. I think it might have been the third generation, but in the later games, in like Heart Gold, Soul Silver for example, if you have a Azurill, which has about 75% chance of being female and 50% chance of being male, and you evolve it, it has a 1/3 chance of becoming male. It's switching from female to male. This is because Maryl's gender probability is 50-50. So it's a possibility for an Azurill to change gender, which is quite strange. You can't have a male Azurill evolve into a female Marill. It has to be the other way around, because the probability of getting a female actually decreases as it evolves, which is a really strange thing that they implemented in the game. I don't know why they didn't change the chances of male and female, because it doesn't seem quite right that that happens. Maybe it was on purpose, I don't know why. Another strange Pokemon introduced in the second generation was Wobbuffet. And you might know Wobbuffet from being a little bit different, a little bit weird. It is the only fully evolved Pokemon that doesn't learn TMs. It doesn't particularly learn any directly attacking moves, it just learns counter and things like that, and Mirror Coat. But another weird thing about it is you may notice that it has a black tail, and on the black tail it has 2 eyes. And now allegedly, this tail is actually what Wobbuffet is, and the body, the blue body that you see, is not actually Wobbuffet. That's more of a shield, sort of a dud. It's not his actual body. It's the tail. It's sort of protection, which is quite strange, because I've never really noticed that before. When I read it up about it, it was surprised, to say the least. But anyway, originally in the Gold, Silver, Crystal games, you could name your mum, which is quite an odd thing that you could do. But I suppose they gave you this option is because the Pokegear was introduced in the second generation, and therefore your mum could ring you up and you could give her names, and you interacted with her quite a bit. So therefore a name would be appropriate. But they actually did get rid of this and just called her your mum, of course, or else a lot of people would notice. But if you do hack the game, you can actually go to that naming event and name your mum, which is kind of a strange thing to do, because I don't think we're quite used to that in Pokemon. But another weird Pokemon thing is that Slowbro was added in the second generation. And if you don't already know, Slowbro is the evolution of Slowpoke, but allegedly, or it's one of the evolutions of Slowpoke, allegedly that Slowbro is basically a Slowpoke with a cloyster on its tail. Or sorry, a Shelder on its tail, not a cloyster. And in a few Pokedex entries reference that if you do take the Shelder off its tail, it will become back, it will sort of de-evolve into a Slowpoke, which is rather odd, because that's quite impossible in Pokemon to de-evolve a Pokemon. This suggests that maybe Slowbro isn't an actual proper evolution, or it's just a cock-up with the Pokemon Pokedex entries. Probably the second one there. Another interesting Pokemon fact from the second generation: Raikou is the only legendary Pokemon that Ash has not met in the anime series or the movies. What happened with Raikou was that Raikou had sort of a series of, I don't know whether to call it a movie, because it wasn't exactly a movie, it was sort of a 4 or 5 part short anime sort of series thing, featuring Jimmy or Kenta, basically the male playable character from the Gold, Silver, Crystal and Heart Gold, Soul Silver games. So he featured as the main character there instead of Ash, which is quite interesting, because that's the first time they've done that. And we have actually seen a promo for the Pokemon Black and White 2 with the playable game characters and not Ash, so maybe we might be able to see some more of that thing, those sorts of things, because I think they do appeal to the older audiences of the Pokemon. And a final weird thing about a Pokemon, the individual Pokemon in the second generation, is Spinarak was actually created by children in the activity design in the card game league in America for Pokemon. So yeah, Spinarak was actually a child's making, which kind of does explain the smile on its back, because that seems somewhat of a childish thing, but I think it was pretty well designed for that young kid. So really, there's not much else to talk about the second generation other than all the strange Pokemon and the weird things about them. There's only 100, but they were very, very individual Pokemon, and also I think the Pokemon with the lowest attack and the highest defenses. I mean, Shuckle, one of them, I can't remember the other one, but Shuckle has the highest defense of any Pokemon and the lowest attack, or near to the lowest attack. Was actually introduced in the second generation as well. They introduced lots of weird Pokemon. So anyway, let's move on to the question of the week. So this week's question of the week is that another website that I have for you to test out your knowledge on the Pokemon games. This week is second generation. I can't remember exactly what I got. I think I got 35. The overall score was much lower this time though. I think it's at 50 something. But yeah, the second generation is something I haven't played that much. I haven't played the second generation at all. I've just played the Heart Gold and Soul Silver, which I've only played through twice, one being a Let's Play and one being real life. So of course I didn't do as good as the Kanto one, I don't think. But yeah, go try that out. I'll put a link in the description as well as, and you'll see the little sidebar thing, and I'll also put what I got there. So I want to say thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week.